Hey, friend, welcome to another podcast. And maybe today the first question for Lindsay should be, what should we name the podcast? Because we've still not named it. So that's not an actual question. You can think about it.
Oh, thank goodness. I'm so bad at stuff like that, though. Like, genuinely, when people put me on the spot for like, oh, what, you know, like we were playing like a group activity and they're like, what should we name our team? I am so bad at
You're
that.
like, please not. Anything.
I'm so bad at that.
I'll answer any of the other questions.
Yeah, don't make me be creative.
I know.
On the spot.
We just talked through the questions and I didn't put that up on there. So I
Okay,
it'd be unfair. But here's the name doesn't matter. What we really hope for you to find in this is helpful conversation that doesn't answer all the questions, but that also encourages you to have more conversations around the sermon material. Yeah. So there are clever names like, I don't know, like the car ride home or something. I don't know. There's like different things like that.
Have you been thinking about this? You're already better than me.
But I think that is another church's, is why I said that. I think
it's not copyright.
Yeah, well, exactly.
Copywritten.
If it is not, then maybe we could do that. But the idea is to take what we primarily see as Sunday morning, 1.5 hours, a couple hours in the morning on a Sunday all together, which is our worship experience, and extend it into the week in a way that helps you think and pray and hopefully live a little differently. And so we know many of you are having good conversations. Some of you are sending questions. We want to encourage more of that.
I love that.
I think you've sent some questions to us,
I have sent in some
which
questions.
is great. But Lindsay, welcome. It's great to have you.
Thank you so much.
And it was wonderful to have you preaching on Sunday.
Thank you. I always love preaching at Right.
Something that we've talked about for a while since I started here.
I know.
It was good to finally make it happen and have you back up.
Scheduling was not our friend over the last kind of 6 or 7 months. It never worked out. So.
Absolutely not. But I thought it was, and we've talked about this, just incredibly powerful, clear, helpful message for us, taking us really, when I started thinking about it, from Luke before Easter through Palm Sunday, Holy Week, Easter, all of the goodness of Easter Sunday with all of the mixture of emotions of Friday, Saturday leading toward it. And then to really quickly then on Sunday, jump back into Luke and continue our series. I thought you connected those dots really well. And like the theme of kingship is just carrying forward both our Luke series and Easter, right? So thanks for doing that well.
Oh, thank you. Was very happy. You know what? It was actually one of those things that I think when I was preparing, I really wanted to actually draw a very intentional connection to Easter, and it just never really came together. It was one of those, like, it almost felt like I was trying to force that. So I was like, you know what? We're just going to lean into the kingship of Jesus, which is really, I mean, that's what we often just honor at Easter anyways. And I was like, hopefully, you know, your audience is always very smart. The people at our congregation are always very smart. They can draw those connections. I didn't need to kind of force that. I think they felt that in terms of the continuation. So
one of the things that I appreciated about how you communicate is you as much as you left that piece hanging and just the language carried it, there was also a moment where you've made it very clear, like, we're talking about Sabbath, but this isn't about Sabbath.
Yes.
This is about Jesus as King. So when you need to be, you're very direct. And not this, it's this.
Yes.
It's this, it's not that.
Yeah.
Which is just so helpful, especially in a sermon that you're trying to pull together many Sundays on. I did want to jump into some of the, I think in terms of like, next questions or thoughts after that sermon that I know I found myself thinking and then reflecting on, and some others as well, having to do with Jesus as King, and also wrestling with what I found interesting in some of N.T. Wright's writing on this. So we were talking ahead of time about Justin and I going to, like, we were invited to the Storm game and paid for parking to 3 random people who were wearing yellow or green, I can't remember, orange vests. And they had like a tap your card here, like $5 flat fee, and how like we just trust that those people actually work for the city.
Yes.
And, you know, you just start thinking about like how many dollars somebody could get away with if they just bought an orange vest and stood there.
Don't give people ideas.
And right, but N.T. Wright brings up the same idea about Jesus,
yeah.
and I'm going like, I know, I've had that experience. Basically, here's this guy who shows up on the scene with no formal training.
Yeah.
He's not like the number one draft choice, as much as like that
guy
might
from Nazareth.
I know, like that might make me a heretic now
Yeah.
to say, but like he's not gone through the standard route toward becoming a rabbi, as far as we know.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
Yeah, sure.
we're not told that he did go through those formal steps. As far as we know, and certainly the Gospels seem to point to this like relatively unknown person who just shows up, but people listen to him.
Yeah.
And I love that about Luke, how he says he teaches as one who has authority.
Yeah.
And there's this weightiness to Jesus' teaching. People are listening to him. And it almost begs the question to me, like, why do you think that people were so captivated by Jesus' teaching on something here that really is, like, it's contradictory. It is going to make people think twice.
Yeah.
Jesus isn't altering some like silly little law off to the, like, this is like we've entered like,
he's challenging the Sabbath. It's the law.
Heavy sort of religious practice, theology, all of it. He's challenging like the foundation of it. Why do you think people listened?
Oh wow. I mean, I think it's a few reasons. One, I think you said like Jesus just taught with authority. I think that, as the Son of God, he had, I would say, an innate authority that people probably gravitated towards. He taught with authority. I think that, situationally people listened to those with authority, and he lived that way and he taught that way. So I think that there was natural human interest in terms of him in that way. But I also think it's the content. I think that he was doing this new thing, and new things are interesting. And he was doing this new thing in a way that was really on the side of life and freedom and restoration. Like all these ideas that I think Israel had probably been talking about for so many years, hundreds of years. And to see a glimpse of what that could look like in a really interesting way, I think that we always talk about how, Jesus often didn't look like people expected. But for a large part of the people who are following Jesus and hearing Jesus, that was probably pretty hope-filled, what he was teaching about. And I think that joy, hope, freedom, restoration, these are things that humans want. And I think that watching Jesus live that and speak that with authority and just infuse this language of this is what the world should really be like, this is how we should be living, I think that was just very new and very hope-filled for a lot of people.
Yeah, I think with I wonder, one of the things I wonder with Sabbath especially is there is debate on how, how true this would be, like universally. Is this is this just a broad generalization, or is it actually representative? But what a lot of people and biblical scholars, intertestamental scholars, so this years between Old Testament and New Testament, have suggested is that Israel by and large has probably drifted away from practicing the Sabbath at this point.
Yeah, it's their life. I mean, life as an occupied people might not have really allowed them to do some of the things that they would have wanted to do, but that just falls away then as that happens, right? Yeah.
And so for Jesus to be speaking now again about Sabbath in some way is challenging what the practices that aren't happening.
Sure.
But also, I think, like you said, why I appreciate your answer, probably like kindling little bits of like hope or life, like little pockets of like, we actually, like, as a culture, we've got this collective memory of the way things were, and the way things aren't the way things, they're not the way they should be.
Yeah.
And Jesus is speaking in some ways, he's like almost like whispering to their like long lost dreams of life. Like life wasn't intended to live like this. Yeah. And so I appreciated you said you pointed us on Sunday toward the reality that Sabbath, part of its intention is to speak to the identity of the people of Israel. You are not slaves. You are free.
Yep.
And you need to be free in order to cease, in order to stop, in order to not work.
Yep.
Like, that's a position of freedom.
Yes.
To choose to stand and not do anything.
Yep.
And here they are, like you've said, in occupied. So they are occupied now, not in the same way that Israel was enslaved in Egypt.
No,
but
it's not.
In a limiting way. They were not autonomous as a people to the same degree as some of the way the picture of entering into the promised land would have looked like. And I just think Jesus is speaking to this long lost, like, dream feeling sense of the way things ought to be, but also in a way that's really challenging, and because he's challenging the Pharisees here, like.
But it's even that language of kingdom, right? Like talking about the kingdom. Like, I mean, you can come with all of the connotations you have about kingdom, but Israel, I think, wanted to be a people again that had a land, that were free, that could worship as they wanted to worship, that had, whether or not their desire for an earthly king was wrong or right. You can debate that in the Old Testament, but I think that idea of restoration, right? And maybe they envisioned it in a really earthly way, like a really earthly kingdom. And I think Jesus brought in the idea of what restoration is, but even using that language that I think would have really spoken to just the hope that they still had.
Mm-hmm. So, again, I think it's N.T. Wright, who I just quote too often.
I quoted N.T. Wright during the sermon, not even from one of the his commentary, but another book of his that I read. I really like.
Some of his, I love the way he sees some of these interactions. So he points us toward ultimately asking the question, who is Jesus saying he is in this? And I think you pointed us rightly and strongly toward, this is Jesus revealing himself as king. This is less about Sabbath and more about kingdom. Yep. This is about Jesus making a claim about who he is who he is to become. Yeah. Really in through the remainder of his life on earth. And really that is to draw the connection strongly toward king and kingdom and God's kingdom arriving and Jesus being the king, bar none now of really like of the world, but certainly of their world as well, right? Yeah. And I think this is where we also start to see Jesus, like he's now starting to encroach, at least toward the Pharisees and religious law, and also toward Caesar and political law. Like this is now language we're starting to see Jesus pushing against religion and pushing against political power and government. So really, like I think there is a hinge point here. But one of the questions that I was thinking through as I was rereading this passage is around some of the language that Jesus uses. So I've heard the argument made by, be it atheists or people who follow different religions, about Jesus, and you especially hear this in the Muslim communities about Jesus, who they would say, by and large, prophet, great.
Sure.
But that he never claimed to be God. Right? So you get this line, like
I heard that.
Right?
I remember hearing that in school.
Like Jesus never claims to be God, right? Like that's kind of this argument, because he doesn't literally say, I am God in the New Testament.
He does not say those three words together.
No.
I am God.
But what he does say is, in our passage, the Son of Man. Yeah. He calls himself the Son of Man. Yeah. And already, I think in our conversation, you used the term Son of God.
Yes, I probably did, yeah.
Which we hear maybe more often than Son of Man. Yeah. Or maybe have an easier time thinking through what Son of God might look like as opposed to Son of Man. or like maybe a simple understanding of fully human, fully God. But Jesus uses Son of Man to refer to himself more than Son of God.
Yes.
And so I'm curious to dive a little deeper into that language and what you have found, obviously in your prep for this Sunday, but just in general as well. This language around Son of Man, what's going on? What's he pointing to? And why is it more than what we might think?
Well, I mean, it's kind of, I've heard the same argument, like, well, he never says he's the Son of God. It's like, yeah, if you're taking it literally that he would have to stand up somewhere and say that, sure. But like, if it walks like a duck and it sounds like a duck, it's a duck. And I mean, it's a Son of Man is just insider baseball, essentially. It's a term. I mean, it's taken from the book of Daniel initially, who is a prophet. And the Son of Man is the vision of this divine messianic king who will have dominion forever and ever, is essentially where the image originally comes from. So you can say that, oh, well, that's not exactly the same thing, except it is the same thing. That was what the expectation of who the Son of Man was. So for his audience, like assuming you're in our story, in the passage that we're looking at, he's in the synagogue, he's teaching, he's likely with mostly Jews. I know there was some, Roman interest in Judaism, so maybe there's some people there as well. But you're largely in a synagogue. You're with Jewish people who know, like, Jews are people of the text, right? Like the Jewish people, they know their text and they know the words, and that comes with history and weight behind it. And when he says this term, like, the Pharisees are not confused about what he is saying. Son of Man is a term for the messianic, divinic hope of Israel in terms of a coming king. So, I mean, that's how I've always interpreted. I don't know about you and what you've studied regarding the term, but it's always that term is not unclear. You can say it's unclear all you want, but it's not an unclear term. People know what it means. So,
yeah, I think that's exactly where I land as well, and I think that's where it's helpful for us to land as we're working our way through the Gospel of Luke. Is there that it's not like Jesus is not playing games with his words. He's not being ambiguous to any degree. It is very clear now who he's beginning to unfold or unveil himself to be, which is this long-awaited messianic savior who is the Son of God. Son of Man is always, beginning in Daniel, and then I think the term in the Old Testament appears, it's like 102 times or something. I can't remember the Hebrew equivalent.
It's one of those obscure things you learn in like biblical studies. That you're like, I'm never going to remember this, and
I can never remember the exact number. It's just like it's around that.
It's a normal term,
and it's always in that like elevated, raised up, lifted up type of way. This isn't just another term for human being. But I just think sometimes we can fall maybe into that, what I would argue is like too simple understanding of, he's Son of Man. He is like Adam, right? And the Greek is literally son of Adam. And so he's a human like us, and he's fully human, and all of what is true for humanity is true about Jesus, just minus the sin problem. And that he's also Son of God, and so he's fully divine, and in many ways that is to miss what Jesus is really doing, which is saying, no, I'm the one. It's like kind of Matrix language, He makes other statements too. I mean, we're not going to get into this because it's not part of the Luke 6 text, but like it's not like he says it once right here in Luke, and you're like, you're making this entire claim around this. Well, it's not the only time he says it. He says other things that point to it as well. And I mean, I don't know. I have heard it argued that Jesus would not have ever referred to himself literally as the Son of God, because as a Jewish man, he would not have been able to speak the name of God that easily out loud. So for their people, it's not a term he could have used for himself in a way that would have been
in any way acceptable to the people around. Like, not that, I mean, Jesus said some things that probably offended some people at some point, but he needed enough of a language to make a bridge to the people, and that might not have been a way he could really build a bridge.
Right.
So
I think that's a really interesting, important insight. In some way, saying the Son of Man accomplishes, and I'm just thinking out loud,
I love it.
What we would maybe more naturally associate with Son of God. Mm-hmm. By Jesus saying Son of Man, he's doing the same thing for his listeners.
Yes.
They're not uncertain about like, oh, is he saying like he's just the son of a human being, or he's like, no, he's making this very real, serious claim to be the Messiah.
Yeah.
And then he doubles down on it with the story from like, haven't you heard how David, when he was in need? And again, there's just so many parallels there that we can't, like, it's just, you can never have time to go into all of it.
You can't.
So
Unfortunately.
you did allude to, though, David, you said in the sermon, David, this is before he was king, but he's the rightful king.
Well, he had already been anointed king.
Exactly.
So he was anointed very early on in his life, and it is slightly strange to anoint a new king before the old king is gone.
Yeah.
So David's story is a little bit strange in that sense as well. But it's the God ordained, God chosen. God said to Saul, you do not have a heart after my own heart. I am going to replace you with someone else. Mm-hmm. And Saul had to live his life witnessing that. But that's the idea that David was anointed king at a young age. He is known now, we've had a bunch of his stories. He's got followers. He's a war hero at this point. And he has been declared as being a man after God's own heart by that point in 1 Samuel as well. And there was this promise of, oh, David is the rightful king. We're just kind of waiting for this to happen. We're waiting for this to be established. So
you said that one line, and I was like, there's so much there to unpack. Because like you said, like David, he is like, he's already, like the lore around who David is at this point has already kind of blown up for sure. Yeah. But at the same time, he still kind of has this almost like ragtag bunch of followers.
I wish I could have gone into that.
They're like running around,
Yeah.
And here's Jesus. Word about him has spread.
Yeah.
He's teaching with authority. Like, it's blowing up.
Yeah.
And yet here he is with just kind of this ragtag bunch of followers running around, and he is the king, but he's not like, it's not yet fully apparent and come to pass. Here's David. He is the king. He's anointed, but it's not yet fully come to, like, the imagery all the way through is just so similar. And again, I'm going like alarm bells would have been going off for these people who are going like, this is everything we've been waiting for. And here he is.
When Jesus uses David's actions sorry, as a precedent for why he is allowed to behave this way. Yeah. Like, you can't, like, can you imagine who's like, well, I can act this way because the most like beloved king of our people acted this way. Like, it's a very weighted statement what he does. And I wanted to like make a whole like chart if I could. That's how my brain thinks, if you compare kind of what Jesus is drawing together in this moment. But it is not a little thing to compare yourself to King David. And then it's interesting because he compares himself to King David, and then he goes and, I am the Son of Man, and I am Lord of the Sabbath. So it's almost like he says, it's not just that I have kind of this level of authority that he had, and I have this, right? Yeah. So it's not that, like, drawing a comparison to King David at that time would have been like, you comparing yourself to who? But then Jesus is like, and we're going to step it up a little bit. Like, I hold these titles as well.
He ramps it up.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Completely.
Yeah. I absolutely love it. Okay. Next question. That's a horrible segue.
It doesn't matter. It's okay.
It doesn't.
I mean, you could like pontificate on the Son of Man and its historical usage all afternoon, but we're not going to do that.
No. It is, though. I think it's crystal clear. Luke is making it crystal clear, whether we see it yet or not, as individuals, as a community, whatever. But it's like, Luke's making it crystal clear now. Jesus has declared who he is.
Oh, yeah.
And the rest is just going to unfold, and it's going to become bolder and the imagery is going to become stronger as if it could, but it still is going to,
Well, you see, I know you're going to ask another question, but you also see how much more this is angering them. Like, this is the first time at the end of the passage where there is the active plotting of, okay, we have to do something to him, right? Like, for them, for the people who are really angered by the message of Jesus, this is now no longer, not acceptable. Like, you know, maybe people would try to pass him off. Oh, he's just crazy or something. That guy over there doing that thing. Like, that's not what this is anymore. And that's very clear, is that, like, the stakes are getting raised, not only in terms of what Jesus is declaring about himself, but how much this is off-putting people who don't want things to look this way.
Yeah.
So
for us, I think you rightly challenged this idea that we can tip or err too far toward law, or too far equally toward grace.
Yeah.
And like, if I was ever going to jump up and say amen, like during mid sermon, like it was almost there.
You should have. It would have been funny.
But I see, you know, I can imagine the Pharisees in the back of their minds are going like, this guy's throwing the law out. Yeah. He's trampling all over it. He's like, he's erring entirely in the wrong direction. Yep. And then they turn and want to completely run in the opposite direction. Yep. And so really we're seeing that tension happen in the text, and we feel it in our own lives.
Oh, absolutely.
You did, though, suggest.
Oh no.
And I think this is accurate, that you know, I think as Christians, I think we can get really excited when we're like, yay, go us, we're the disciples, ragtag bunch of followers, we're gonna, you know, they fail, but we'll get there in the end. And actually, and I would say, like, especially for those of us who've been around the church for a long time or longer time, like, we need to pay more attention to the Pharisees.
Yeah.
And, but you did challenge, okay, we can err toward law, but maybe more as the church too, we can err toward grace.
Yeah.
And, like I said, I think if when we err toward law, I think Christians get really excited. We're like, yes, no law, like, no, we're not about the law.
Yeah. We are not people of the law.
We are not people of the law. We're free from the law, and we're going to get tattoos and we're going to do whatever, right? But then when it comes to suggesting that we might err too far toward grace, we go, don't like that too much, you're a Pharisee, and just dismiss it entirely.
Yep.
So I'm wondering if you can flesh that out for us, because I think it's like, I think you're pressing in on something that is a challenge.
Yeah.
Like, how do we hold the tension that I think Jesus tries to walk and hold?
Yeah.
But what is it to err too much toward grace?
Yeah.
What does it look like? But tension.
Yeah. I mean, it is a hard tension, right? Like that. I mean, I think that I meant it really seriously when I said, you know, Sabbath is both law and a gift, and it's both of those things, and they're not meant to compete against one another. They are meant to live. And if Jesus is the fulfillment of the law, and he has that perfect balance of law and grace in him. I mean, I did in that moment mean it very specifically to the Sabbath, in the sense that you can go too far with saying, this is how you must observe the Sabbath and it must look this way. And then I think you're distorting the essential point of it. But at the same time, I've seen a lot of Christians, and I'm going to include myself in this, where I've treated it way too cavalierly. Like, it's not important. It doesn't matter. I am free. I don't have and I don't think you're getting the point either if you're being too cavalier, too wishy-washy, you're thinking it's too optional. But the point, I think, does extend beyond. I remember talking to someone, I don't know how old we were. We were in our early 20s, so it was ages ago. But it was this concept of like, I don't have to worry about sin because I'm free. Like, I can kind of do what I want, and I know Jesus will forgive me and stuff like that. Yeah. And just that concept of cheap grace. Just that, like, we think that because grace didn't cost us anything, that it didn't have a cost. And that's... And that attitude of it's not serious, or it doesn't matter, or that there aren't consequences, or that's not a way to live your life either.
I'm so tempted to get up, but I can't, because I will walk out of camera and grab, like, I've got like Bonhoeffer on my shelf, right?
Yeah.
Who wrote the entire Cost of Discipleship.
Yeah.
beginning that with that term, cheap grace.
Yeah.
So can you define it just a little bit more?
Cheap grace is, essentially it's that. It's when you Wait, it's actually a really hard term to define. I've never thought about it. I've just kind of used it.
Yeah.
Cheap grace is the concept that grace did not cost anything, or that grace is easy is the better way of saying it. And because if things are easy, they can be abused.
Yeah.
So cheap grace is the notion of that we live in a way where we have no regard to use a Christian word, we have no regard to sanctification or living the life that Jesus modeled. All we care about is that, I'm forgiven, so I'm good. My salvation is already set for me. I'm forgiven, kind of wash my hands of it. I can live however I want. Mm-hmm. And I would challenge that attitude is so unchristian, really, because grace is not easy. It didn't come easy in terms of what it cost Jesus, obviously, but grace is not easy to extend to others. Grace is not right. Like grace is so entwined in our faith of how we live. And if we profane it in the sense where it doesn't matter on one side of things, it's never going to sit and live in your life, and it's never going to change who you are. Mm-hmm. And then you're never going to be able to extend it to outward, which is really something that we are called to do as followers. So
yeah. It's like a horrible analogy that falls short in so many different ways, and it's not a good to strive toward. But I think of like just the stories or kind of talk around, I feel like if you earn $1 million, you know the worth of $1 million. Pick a number, it doesn't matter the number.
Sure, yeah.
But if you're given that, like overnight in an instant, like you just don't, there's a difference.
Yeah.
You don't know to the same degree what that money is worth.
Yeah.
What it cost to attain.
Yeah.
And, you see stories of people like who win the lottery and then
ruins their lives.
Ruins their entire life. For a whole variety of reasons.
Yeah.
But not least of which I think is just like, you don't know how to be with that sudden, like overwhelming wealth. And again, like it falls so short in so many different ways.
No, but it's a good analogy.
But I think it starts to get at that. Like we've been given this incredible gift that we have on the one hand, like just no concept of the weight of it. And yet we are called to feel and sit with the weight of it, which is like why a Good Friday matters.
Yeah.
And it drives me up the wall when churches just go like, we're going to do 3 days of Easter Sunday services, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and you can come to any of them and they don't matter. And I was like, we miss the weight of the reality of Good Friday, which starts to sit at it.
Well, and I don't think that Christians are called to live in condemnation or shame, but sin carries a weight, and to not take that seriously. I don't even know if I know how to finish that sentence, only to say like it should matter to you. Like the weight of sin should, there's a holy like sin sitting place that is it is good for us to wrestle with that and struggle with that. That's a good thing.
Yeah. So like, again, I tried like all of the analogies, all my analogies anyways, maybe like I
love that you have it. I have no analogies.
I need a smarter person to give me smarter analogies. But the like when I think of being a parent, like there are moments where I want my kid to feel guilty. And like if they're listening to this in like 10 or 15 years, like I hope you understand.
A little bit of guilt is a good thing.
Right?
It teaches you something.
Even if you're a teacher, if you're anybody working with kids, like at a certain age, you want your kid to feel the weight and responsibility of their actions. And like if if a kid hits another kid, or if they like are bullying, we don't understand the weight of words. Like when you have done something wrong and hurt somebody else, you want that kid, like I want my kid to feel guilty to some degree, like not to an unhealthy, but to some degree, because I want them to care deeply about people and to realize the weight of what they're able to do.
Yeah.
Where I think it tips to unhealthy degree would be how I would describe like shame. I don't want them to feel ashamed
No.
So I want them to feel a weight or a sense of guilt that wrong has been committed, that they have power to hurt others and to affect other people's lives, but that weight or reality doesn't go to the core of shameful identity. This is who I am forever kind of of a place. Yeah. Right. And, I've not perfectly figured out how to do that as a parent. And I think that's also a challenge and a struggle to figure out. But any parent knows, the worst response to your kid's done something wrong is that they laugh and run away.
Well, and you're like, and you don't know what to do. You're like,
and it makes you so angry.
We need to have a conversation about this. Like,
how did we get here? So I think there's a right weightiness, and guilt does play a role. What I would say that guilt actually plays a role in the gospel to some degree. Yeah. Shame, no, the gospel pushes shame out. Yeah. Because that's an identity piece that's, again, simple, but I did something, I am something. Yeah. There's a difference between sitting with the weight of what you've done and then being like, oh, I'm no good. Yeah. Very bad. Going to the garbage to eat worms. Yeah. Not deserving of anything, right? That kind of, there's a difference there.
There is.
But I think costly grace, the weightiness of grace, of discipleship is the acknowledgement of that weight that Jesus releases us from.
Sure.
But don't keep running back into it. Okay.
Well, and Paul says it too, right?
Exactly.
Do you just go on sinning? No, of course you don't go on sinning. That's not what we're saying here at all. So I think that he was very smart and knew the risk of humanity to be it doesn't mean you could just sin anytime you want. That's not what I'm saying.
Yeah. So, okay, let's circle back to Sabbath, to grace, law, finding the tension, existing in it. Not all tensions are meant to be resolved. I think this is one of those times where it's going to feel like it's going to feel. I'm curious what you have found your Sabbath practices to be. Now again, this isn't a deep dive into the good, the bad, and the ugly of Sabbath, but I'm curious for you. I know the cliche thing is there's freedom in boundaries. Sure. There's freedom in fences, and there are these great studies for of kids playing in playgrounds. Yep. They play more freely when there's fences.
Sports have rules.
Yeah.
Sports are not fun if there are no rules, because someone can just say, oh, I won arbitrarily, right?
Guardrails are great. The first time I drove a mountain pass without them, I'm like, this is the end of my life. This is how I'm going to die now. Yes. And so, you don't even necessarily realize they're there until they're not, and then you're like, oh, we need these. But how do you wrestle it out in your own life? What have you found helpful? I'm thinking of the person at home who's okay, I know this isn't the main point of the sermon, but I could picture somebody thinking through, I need to start Sabbath practice somehow. Where would you how would you suggest someone start to navigate that tension?
I would say start small. Mm-hmm. I think that we live in a culture where it's very much all or nothing. If you can't be perfect at it right away for exactly 24 hours, it's I am a failure and I give up. It doesn't work in my life.
What's the point?
What is the point of doing it?
Absolutely.
And I think that is the wrong posture to go to it with. I think that start small, start in practical ways, start in ways that, I think are life-giving for you. I don't think there's a perfect way to practice it. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I've wrestled with in hearing people talk about Sabbath is people talk about crashing, I just want to play video games or getting lost in Netflix or something like that. I don't think that's what Sabbath is. Mm-hmm. I would push against, if you're crashing at the end of a week, I don't know if there's something going on in your life that needs to be reevaluated, but Sabbath is meant to be, I think, more intentional time that is spiritually rejuvenating, whatever that looks like for you. So I worry less. I wouldn't worry as much about the day. I wouldn't worry about it being a full day right away if that's not practical for your life. I also think people give up too quickly. Like part of Sabbath, the reason that it's there is because it's a rhythm, and it takes time to build rhythms in your life, and it takes times for rhythms to become normal. Like I said, I don't really like to work out. This is a weird, here's my weird analogy. I don't really like to work out, but I do it. And when I don't do it for a while, I miss it. Yeah. Now, Sabbath should be in like enjoyment, but until you've actually built a rhythm of it in your life, I don't think you're going to see a ton of fruit right away. And I don't think you're not going to miss it until it's an established rhythm. So I think some people, they get so discouraged early on and don't trust that it's going to take time for the fruit to grow. And I think that's something that, I don't know if that's encouraging for the people who are listening, but I think it's start small and maybe just trust the process. Trust that if you're faithful to show up, that God's going to be faithful to show up, and that this takes time to build.
Again, I think that's great because I mean, I know this to be even in my own life, like all or nothing. Like it's like all in or not. It's like, let's go run 50 kilometers in the woods, or let's not run for 5 months in a row.
Yeah.
Like it can be, I think it's easy to fall into that kind of mentality. Maybe easier for others than like me, than some.
Some people are more all or nothing. But I don't think, I think we want results immediately. We want, like, we're like, I'm going to go into Sabbath so I can feel a spiritual high or whatever that. And I'm like, oh.
So I think where we would err, and this is, I think, like to push into the tension of it's a command. Do it.
It is a command. Do it.
And it's going to probably feel uncomfortable for a bit. But I think what I see people do is, and what I've done is like, I'm going to go all out on this one Sabbath, and I am going to be legalistic about the whole day, 24 hours, and I'm going to do all my shopping ahead of time, and I'm going to, prep food, and we're going to enjoy the day together. I'm going to do Bible study. I'm going to read this. I'm going to read that. I'm going to go here. I'm going to go outside. I'm going to, go for a walk with my kids, or we're going to, and the whole 24 hours almost becomes this like rigorous, overscheduled nightmare of a day,
which is then exhausting.
And then you're exhausted on the other side of it. You're like, I'm never doing that again.
Yeah.
And that, for some reason, that feels like less legalistic than, no, I'm going to set aside 1 hour every single Saturday, and I'm going to start my day that way. And that's going to be how I'm going to honor the Sabbath to start. Yeah. And I'm going to be like, I am going to be militant about this 1 hour every day for a month. Or for 2 months, or for 6 months. And like building out that way, like you're saying, I think is a lot. Like if you're going to choose to.
And that's not legalism. I think that's the thing, is that people think that if you have regiment, that equals legalism. Right. Those two things are not the same thing. Yeah. Having regiment, having discipline around something, again, boundaries, guardrails, these are good things and help us tend to thrive in what we were doing. I love the example, like 1 hour. Of a day once a week, Saturday, Sunday, whatever that day is for you. I mean, most people kind of work the traditional, but whatever works for you. It doesn't have to be a day. Like make it a Tuesday if Tuesday's the best day for you. I do think removing tech is probably a good idea for a little while. Getting off your phone is a really good thing. Going for a walk in nature if you're able to do that, or finding equivalent if it's looking out a window with a great coffee and just marveling of, oh my gosh, look at how beautiful this world is. I think there's lots of little ways that you can start that are generally life-giving. And
Eugene Peterson talks about Sabbath as being a day to play and pray.
Yes.
So I think like have fun.
Yeah.
Like, and enjoy the day. And probably make one rule.
Sure.
That helps with the rhythm or the routine, or like it helps even buy into it, right? I try to listen to, like when we do Sabbath well, so no tech, like you're suggesting, that's huge. I even so I'll listen to vinyl records, because I know it's sort of still like it's electricity and it's a technology. Yes, it is, but it's not digital.
No.
So if I'm disconnected from the internet, from anything digital in that way, that I sucked into email or whatever. So phone away, computer away, iPad away,
Yep.
TV off, vinyl record. There's something slowed down about dusting
The
it
whole
off,
process,
putting
yeah.
it down, flipping it halfway through, which
Yep.
always feels too soon. Like all of that, I think slowing down, but play, pray, start small, I think is
Yeah.
exactly the right way. And
Give yourself grace.
yeah,
You have a bad week and something doesn't work out on your Sabbath day one week, not all is lost. Not
Yep.
all you've gained or started is gone. It doesn't mean that next week you can't start again. And I would say, like, start again if you can. Don't make it this thing where I've missed once and I'm a failure and now I've gotten out of the rhythm. Like, it doesn't have to be that. You can start again.
Yep. You said in the sermon that Sabbath is a preview of what life in the kingdom will look like,
Yep.
right? And I think you said should look like, but let it be that. Let it be a
Yeah.
preview. It's a preview. It's this glimpse into it. It's beautiful, and we won't do it perfectly,
No.
but it's this like glimpse into
Yeah.
the way life was created to be.
Yeah.
So allow it to be that. I think that's a great place for us to end.
I love that.
I want to say thanks again. It was great.
Oh, thank you. Thank you I love teaching at Courtright. Like I said, I love this community, and it's always great to have just a conversation about all the things I wanted to include, but I couldn't because we didn't have time.
It always this helps me with my editing process so much
Yeah.
because I just know we can talk about it on the podcast.
we can talk about it later.
Yeah. Maybe take away this as a practical thing. I'll speak for you too. We would actually love to hear your best Sabbath practices.
Yes. Oh,
Right?
please. That would be great.
Like it would be fantastic
Yeah.
just to let's hear some of the stories about what practices you enjoy most, are most refreshing to your soul on the Sabbath, and let's collect those stories and
that'd be
encourage one another. So
Love that.
we hope this is encouraging to you, and we hope it finds you having a good and hopefully slowed down post-Easter week back into the normal rhythms of life. And as always, any questions, you can send them to questions@courtright.org.